Hey, Sacred Tales, ever felt like your energy just isn't where it used to be? Like something is constantly draining you spiritually? What if I told you that the very thing that seems like fun or pleasure could be secretly robbing you of your spiritual strength? There's a story of a young man who, after years of chasing temporary pleasures and desires, noticed something was off. His faith wasn't as strong, his clarity was blurred, and even his relationships felt empty. He kept wondering why he didn't feel that spiritual spark he once had despite praying and attending church. It wasn't until he began reflecting on his past choices that the truth became clear. His decisions around sexuality were quietly draining his spiritual energy, leaving him spiritually dry and disconnected from his higher purpose. The Bible warns us about the spiritual dangers of certain behaviors. And today we're going to explore 8 sexual sins that, whether we realize it or not, are draining our spiritual energy. If you're a chosen one, it's time to shine light on these hidden enemies and restore your power. Stick around till the end, because the last point might just hit home for you, and it's something you need to hear. It's time to wake up and protect your spiritual energy like never before. Now, I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to help you awaken, heal, and grow stronger in your spiritual journey. Let's get into it and discover the wisdom that'll change your life. Point 1. Fornication, the gateway sin. Let's dive into a topic that often gets glossed over in today's culture: fornication. In modern times, it's too easy to view it as just sex, a casual act that doesn't carry much weight. However, when we look at it through the lens of spirituality, particularly from a biblical perspective, it reveals a much deeper truth. The Bible speaks of fornication not just as a physical act, but as something that affects the very core of who we are, our soul. In 1 Corinthians 6:18, it clearly states, "Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body." Fornication, in this sense, is not simply about the physical connection between two people. It goes far beyond that. Each time we engage in it, we form a spiritual bond that's meant to be sacred, one that should ideally be shared within the bounds of marriage. Think of it like connecting 2 electronic devices with a cord. Once that connection is made, the energy flows between them and it leaves an imprint. Spiritually, when you engage in fornication, you are tying yourself to someone else in a way that is not just temporary. It's a bond that has lasting effects on your emotional and spiritual state. Every time you give away this sacred energy, you're essentially chipping away at your spiritual clarity. You may start to feel drained, disconnected, or even lost as your energy is being directed away from your divine purpose. The more you engage in this act, the more you lose sight of your higher self, becoming distracted by worldly desires instead of focusing on what truly elevates your soul. This can result in a feeling of emptiness, as if something fundamental is missing, even though you're physically present. In essence, fornication doesn't just affect the body, it deeply impacts the soul. By aligning yourself with behaviors that stray from your spiritual path, you risk losing the connection to your higher calling. It's about more than just following rules, it's about preserving the purity of your spirit, ensuring that every connection you make is one that uplifts and aligns with your true divine purpose. Point 2. Adultery, the spiritual betrayal. Adultery is often viewed merely as a betrayal within the confines of a relationship, but in reality it extends far beyond that. It is a profound betrayal of your soul. In Matthew 5:27-28, Jesus highlights this deeper truth, stating, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." This powerful statement reveals that adultery isn't just about physical action, but about intention, thought, and the heart's desires. It points to the fact that we are more than our actions, and our spiritual integrity is tied to our inner thoughts and emotions. Lust, as Jesus speaks of it, isn't confined to just a physical act. It transcends into the realm of our hearts and minds, urging us to examine the purity of our inner world. When a person strays from their partner, it is not just the emotional or physical betrayal that causes damage, it's the spiritual chaos that ensues. The relationship between two people is deeply sacred, and when that bond is broken, it affects the very fabric of one's spiritual and emotional well-being. In straying, you break not just a promise to your partner, but a promise to yourself and to God. The ripple effect is vast. It disturbs your inner peace and disconnects you from your higher self, creating a rift in your spiritual alignment. It's as though a fracture has been made in the trust that binds your soul to your purpose. This spiritual dissonance is more than just an uncomfortable feeling. It becomes a draining force that saps your energy. The heart, once aligned and at peace, now struggles to reconcile its actions with its true purpose. As a result, you may feel confusion, guilt, or even an inexplicable distance from your own sense of self. The process of seeking forgiveness and healing becomes an essential journey to restoring that peace. In a sense, adultery is not only about the damage done to another person, but the deeper harm inflicted upon the soul, forcing one to confront the broken trust with oneself and the Creator. True healing requires mending the relationship not just with others, but with the divine alignment that sustains your spiritual journey. Point 3. Lust, the trap of the mind. Lust, a powerful and often misunderstood force, is something that touches everyone at some point in their lives. Yet it is a dangerous force that many underestimate in terms of its spiritual impact. In Matthew 5:28, Jesus warns us that even lusting in our hearts is as sinful as committing the physical act. This revelation is a profound reminder that our thoughts are just as important as our actions, and unchecked desires can cloud the purity of our intentions. Lust isn't just a fleeting feeling, it's an emotional and spiritual state that distorts the way we view the world and the people around us. When we allow lust to take root in our hearts, it transforms our perception. Instead of seeing others as beautiful creations of God, we begin to objectify them, viewing them through a lens of personal desire rather than recognizing their inherent dignity and value. This shift in perspective is not only harmful to our relationships with others, but also to our spiritual growth. Lust pulls our focus away from the divine and leaves us chasing after fleeting desires that can never be fully satisfied. It creates a hunger in the soul, one that no material or physical experience can ever quell. Moreover, lust is a force that drains our energy and spiritual vitality. When we fixate on our desires, we divert our attention from the path of purity, truth, and enlightenment. This hunger for satisfaction becomes a constant cycle. As the more we indulge in lustful thoughts and behaviors, the emptier we feel. The energy that could have been spent nurturing our connection with God, improving our relationships, and cultivating our inner peace is instead redirected into a cycle of dissatisfaction and confusion. Over time, this depletes our spiritual resources, leaving us disconnected and detached from the higher calling God has placed within us. In essence, lust is not just a temptation of the flesh, it's a spiritual challenge. It tests our commitment to purity, to seeing others through God's eyes, and to maintaining a focused heart on spiritual growth. By acknowledging lust's dangers and striving for a mindset that values people and purpose over temporary desires, we begin to reclaim our spiritual energy and restore our connection with the divine. The journey of overcoming lust is not just about resisting temptation, it's about strengthening our ability to see the world through a higher, purer lens. Point 4, pornography, the silent energy thief. In today's world, pornography has subtly woven itself into the fabric of daily life, often seeming like a harmless, even normal part of modern society. With the internet offering immediate access to explicit content at the touch of a button, it's become an easily accessible form of entertainment for many. But Sacred Tales, don't be fooled. This seemingly innocent indulgence is one of the most destructive spiritual drains in existence. Proverbs 27:20 warns, "Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied." This verse encapsulates the insatiable nature of human desire, particularly in areas like pornography. Every time you indulge, you're feeding your mind and spirit with transient, artificial images, pulling you farther away from God's design for genuine intimacy. God's vision of intimacy is sacred, rooted in love, trust, and respect. It's not about quick fixes or fleeting pleasure, but about building deep emotional and spiritual bonds. In contrast, pornography feeds into a culture of instant gratification. Each click, each image offers a temporary escape, but leaves the soul emptier than before. Over time, this habit desensitizes the spirit, diminishing your sensitivity to the beauty of true, meaningful relationships. What starts as a seemingly harmless indulgence gradually erode your capacity for emotional depth, ultimately distorting your perception of love and connection. The spiritual impact is profound and often unnoticed. Pornography dulls the heart, distracts the mind, and disconnects you from the higher calling that God has for your life. By continually reinforcing unhealthy patterns, you draw yourself away from your true purpose, seeking temporary pleasure at the expense of lasting fulfillment. Sacred tales remember the eyes are the windows to the soul. What you choose to focus on shapes who you are. Pornography may promise satisfaction, but it only delivers emptiness. It's a thief of spiritual energy, diverting your focus from the peace and purity God desires to cultivate within you. Point 5. Masturbation misguided energy. Masturbation is often brushed off as a harmless release of sexual tension, but from a spiritual perspective, its impact is far more profound than many realize. Biblically, it goes against the natural design of intimacy that God intended for human relationships. In Ephesians 5:3, we are reminded to avoid even a hint of sexual immorality, which includes behaviors like masturbation. While it might offer brief physical pleasure, this temporary satisfaction doesn't nourish the soul or align with God's greater purpose for our lives. It's easy to fall into the belief that it's just a harmless activity, but the truth is, it distracts us from the deeper, more meaningful connections and spiritual fulfillment that we are meant to pursue. Masturbation misdirects your sexual energy, which, when channeled properly, can be a powerful force for creativity, productivity, and genuine human connection. Instead of nurturing your body and spirit in a way that reflects God's design, it can lead to feelings of emptiness and spiritual disconnection. This is because it disconnects us from the sacred relational aspect of human intimacy, leaving us with a sense of spiritual void. It's a misuse of energy that could be redirected toward higher purposes, such as nurturing relationships or focusing on personal growth. The key here is balance. Recognizing that while sexual energy is a natural part of life, it should be directed in a way that aligns with God's will, bringing us closer to fulfilling our divine potential. Embracing this mindset encourages us to honor our bodies, our relationships, and our spiritual journeys in ways that create lasting fulfillment rather than temporary pleasure. Point 6. Emotional affairs, the soul's secret betrayal. Emotional affairs are often overlooked because they don't involve physical acts, yet they can be just as damaging, if not more so, to a relationship. In Proverbs 4:23 it says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." This is a powerful reminder that our hearts are the wellspring of our emotions, decisions, and actions. When you allow emotional investment to flow outside the boundaries of your committed relationship, you're opening the door to spiritual and emotional disconnect. Unlike physical affairs, emotional affairs involve intimate conversations, shared secrets, and a deep emotional bond with someone who isn't your partner. Over time, this connection can erode the trust and closeness that should exist in a healthy partnership. It's like a slow leak in a dam. At first, it might seem harmless, but over time, the emotional resources you once reserved for your partner begin to drain away. In essence, you're sharing your emotional energy, your vulnerability, and your time with someone who isn't meant to have access to those sacred parts of you. What's even more dangerous is the spiritual toll this can take. As the Bible reminds us, our hearts should be guarded. By protecting our emotional energy, we protect the sacred connection between us and our partner. When we invest emotionally in someone else, it's like we're giving away pieces of our spiritual power, leaving ourselves and our relationship vulnerable to outside influence. The love you share with your partner should be a fortress of intimacy, not compromised by emotional ties that dilute that sacred bond. Guard your heart, and in doing so, protect the love that's meant to be your spiritual strength. Point 7, self-indulgence, the idolization of pleasure. In today's society, self-indulgence has become almost second nature, with many pursuing constant gratification in various forms, whether it's through material wealth, fleeting relationships, or even the pursuit of momentary pleasures. However, for those who are spiritually aware, those who have been chosen for a higher purpose, it's crucial to recognize the dangers of making these indulgences the center of your life. The Bible warns us in Colossians 3:5 to put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. These words are not just a caution, they are a spiritual directive that emphasizes the importance of maintaining a life rooted in divine purpose rather than the ephemeral joys of the world. When pleasure becomes an idol, you lose the connection to your true self and your higher calling. The pursuit of fleeting highs, whether through instant gratification or materialistic desires, can trick you into thinking that they bring fulfillment, but in reality, they only drain your spiritual energy. The satisfaction derived from these indulgences is temporary, offering no lasting peace. True peace comes from living in alignment with God's purpose, dedicating your actions and intentions to a greater, more enduring cause. As chosen ones, every moment spent chasing after these superficial pleasures is a moment that could otherwise be used for spiritual growth and enlightenment. Your energy is precious. Invest it wisely. By choosing to live in accordance with divine principles, you open the doors to lasting fulfillment, peace, and alignment with your higher purpose. The world may tempt you to indulge, but remember, the pursuit of worldly pleasure is a trap that keeps you far from the true peace that only comes from God. Point 8. The spirit of comparison, destroying your sexual purity. When you constantly compare your relationship or sexual life to others, you open the door to negative emotions like jealousy and discontentment. It's easy to fall into the trap of measuring your experiences against what you see in others, whether on social media or among friends. But this comparison ultimately harms your spirit. The Bible speaks to this truth in 2 Corinthians 10:12, saying, "We do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise." This powerful verse highlights a common pitfall many people overlook, believing that comparing ourselves to others is a standard for growth. But in reality, it does the opposite. It traps us in a cycle of dissatisfaction, pulling our focus away from our own unique path. Comparing your relationship or personal experiences with others takes away your ability to appreciate the beauty and depth of your own journey. Everyone's path is different, shaped by individual circumstances, lessons, and growth. When you compare, you neglect the lessons and blessings that are uniquely yours. This comparison is like a weight on your spirit, causing you to feel inferior, or at the very least, less fulfilled than others. This doesn't allow for true self-growth or spiritual connection because you're always distracted by what others are doing. Instead, focusing on your own experiences and the growth that comes from them nourishes your spirit and strengthens your connection with God. Recognizing that you are exactly where you need to be is an empowering realization that fosters contentment, peace, and spiritual fulfillment. Sacred tales, as we close, let me remind you, your sexual energy is sacred and it's connected to your spiritual vitality. Every decision you make affects your relationship with God, yourself, and others. As we learn from these biblical teachings, our journey is about purity, self-control, and alignment with God's divine plan. When you free yourself from these sexual sins, you not only protect your energy, but restore your connection to the divine. Remember, you are chosen. Your spiritual strength is sacred, and it's time to protect it like never before. I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on your own life. What areas are draining your energy? What can you do today to reclaim your spiritual power? Let's walk this journey together, keeping our hearts pure and our spirits strong. Watch this video till the end and stay awake in your spiritual journey. You are divinely designed for greatness, chosen ones, and it's time to reclaim your true power. Purity isn't just about avoiding sin, it's about aligning yourself with the divine flow of life, maintaining your spiritual energy and fulfilling your highest potential as a chosen one. Let's be intentional with our choices and honor our sacred energy. Your spiritual journey awaits. Walk it with purpose, clarity, and strength.